How's it going, my dudes? Welcome back to another Goddess of Genesis video. So for today, we're going to talk about the 10 rules of the story mode PvE. So these are not necessarily hard and fast rules, and if you do have other further additions, do let me know down in the comments, and with that, we can proceed on with the video. So rule number 1, always prioritize beating the stage over other things like getting 3 stars and then over getting the full completion, the perfect completion. Because in this game, a lot of the time, a lot of the content is gated behind the progress of your PvE in the story mode. So as such, you're not able to unlock the higher difficulty unless you actually beat the story modes that do unlock these stages. While it might be more rewarding to do 15 stars per chapter, sometimes you really just cannot do so because of your lineup and because of your current standing. But it is also really important to just ignore the fact that you can't fully clear it now. Clear it once with like 1 or 2 stars, that's fine, and come back again in the future. Gaining access to the higher floors of, let's say, the slime treasure trove, these pay out much more in the long run. I know a lot of players are afraid of having like loose ends and then coming back again, spending more energy just to beat the stages that you've already beaten before, and it's like not really very energy friendly. But take it from me, it's perfectly fine. You're not gonna lose out in any way. In fact, you're just gonna benefit from this. Rule number 2, it is okay to quit and redo. Experiencing failure itself helps you to re-establish your strategies and to be able to tackle like the individual difficulty of each stages and their little nuances that clears the way for you much easier. So one example that comes to mind is there are some stages where the enemies drop a lot of shield, and those shield gets really difficult to handle, especially if you just let those monsters survive. And as such, it might be more meaningful to actually just quit, re-establish your team, think of who you want to bring in to deplete those shields, aka Voidbreaker and Lucifer, and then with that, you'll be able to beat the stage much more easily and much more quickly, and thus being able to actually get 3 out of 3 stars. And rule number 3, always play on manual mode, okay? Because if you go on auto, sometimes you're able to clear the stage really well and really quickly, and you can actually just do it while you're doing other stuff. That's awesome. However, a lot of times, you may actually want to do a normal attack instead of using a heal, for example. So like for me, I rarely ever use a heal on my Venus, to be honest. I only ever use Venus's heal at most once per round, per fight or whatever you call it. Most of the time, I'm just going to use her to normal attack. But I don't want to automate the runs and then set her onto normal attack because sometimes I might really need that drastic heal. So do this manually and maximize your returns based on the energy that you're putting in for this. Rule number 4, okay, in setting up your team, it is quite important to focus on AoE damage, especially in the higher chapters, okay? So when you're reaching chapters 26, 27, 28, onwards to 31, or even beyond, AoE damage becomes the king. You will quickly realize that each of the floors, each of the waves have spawns of 6 or even 7 enemies at once. And sometimes it's not even about clearing it within the specified number of turns. Sometimes it's not even possible to clear them fast enough such that when they attack you, they're not going to overrun you. So AoE damage is becoming more and more of a concern. Some really good AoE units are Lilith, Merlin, Chang'e for her support as well, Artemis slightly, Cleopatra, and Abe no Seimei. But these are just examples. You can obviously bring any AoE unit that you want, even R-types, SR-types, whatever it may be. They can be useful as long as you fully utilize them to the best of their abilities. So if you're a new player, it might be a good idea to start investing on AoE units so that in the long run, you would be able to bank on them when you really need them to be really effective. Rule number 5, know who your enemies are and know who to target. Like previously that I mentioned, there are some units that boost a shield on their entire lineup. So those are some of the units that you may want to prioritize either nuking them down or crowd controlling them immediately. Other very important choices for primary targeting are enemies that do AoE damage. So like you can see over here, I took out the 2 dogs because they are really dangerous from the first turn. And if you notice, I'm going to get wiped by the remaining 2 on the other side. So as such, I had to quit and I had to re-establish my strategies. And I realized that, Lucifer is not going to be enough. Okay, taking out 2 of them is not going to be enough. So I decided to use Lilith to use her S3 to take down one of the dogs, so that I can use Lucifer to take down 2 of the AoEs, and I will be able to survive the remaining guy on the right who's going to do an AoE over here. So prioritizing your targets is very, very important. It is pretty much a skill, okay, to get to know your enemies. If you're really not sure what they individually do, you can always press the magnifying glass icon on the top right and you'll be able to see the enemies individually and what skills they have and what are their cooldowns. So for example, it's really ingrained in me that the Hellhounds, okay, the dog with the 3 hits, they use their AoE every 2 turns. So just be aware of that. And now we move on to rule number 6. Manage your mana. Okay, so everyone knows that your mana is very limited, especially in the first 2 or 3 turns. As such, you might want to be more careful of the kind of units that you bring in. You don't want to just load up fully on DPS because the problem with that is you're going to run out of mana very, very easily. So for my case, it might be more tempting to use Chang'e to use her second skill and do an AoE damage at the start, but because of the mana shortage, I actually have to go ahead and use her Moon Lantern first, and then Lilith uses her S2 that costs 2 energy so that my Lucifer can actually drop 2 of her third skills. So plan your lineup really wisely, know which heroes to bring in that will not necessarily consume way too much mana from the start, or you can actually bring in Alice because she's a really, really good battery, so she boosts your team by 2 energy every turn and it's going to be very, very helpful, especially on the first and second waves of your fight. Ideally, you want to have 2 or at most 3 DPSs depending on how your team is built, and this will give you the ideal balance between tank and spank. Rule number 7, okay, so rule number 7 and 8 are kind of similar. They are both focused on Lucifer, okay, because everyone has a Lucifer, so it makes a lot of sense to talk a little bit about her and how to use her effectively. Okay, so rule number 7, like I mentioned before, Void Breaker, okay, so her second skill, do not sleep on it. Even though like her third skill is a lot more damaging and it's a lot more fun to use because you get more opportunities to hit again once more. Sometimes enemies who just spam lots of shield, right, using the Void Breaker is key to one-shotting an enemy with a huge chunk of shield. Because what Void Breaker does is it removes that shield first, then you do 450% damage, and then if you did remove a shield, you do an extra 250% more damage. So as such, it's like a critical hit on any enemy who has a shield, and you basically just ignore the fact that they have a shield. And this has been tremendously useful, especially in niche killing. And this brings me to rule number 8. Lucifer actually hits harder on her second hit. Okay, so you can use the third skill twice, but the thing is, because of her passive, she actually gains crit damage after hitting once. As such, her second hit will always be stronger. And with that, you should notice that I'm actually using Lucifer to use her first hit on a weaker target and then the second hit on the tougher target. Okay, so some players don't really use this fact of Lucifer. So what they do is they use 2 hits on a very tanky unit when instead they should have used the first hit on a weaker enemy and the second hit to actually one-shot the tank. And that was actually a very, very helpful tip for PvP as well. I know I made a mistake in the past where I've encountered units with high shields and I used my third skill instead, thinking that, oh man, I can't break the shield fast enough, I'm not actually doing my best. But the thing is, I made a huge mistake. Void Breaker, don't sleep on it. It's a really, really good skill. And now rule number 9. Okay, it's very important to bring support units, okay? And it's more important to bring the right support units. It's not all about filling up the combo, okay? So like for example on the top right, I have my fire and my earth done. It's less important to fill those up than it is to bring the right supports, okay? So even if it means that you cannot actually bring in the correct set bonuses, what's important is to actually bring CC units, okay? Healers are good as well, but CC units are even, I would say that they are equally useful, okay? So there are 3 CC units that I can think of from the top of my head that actually does it in their support role. Number 1 is obviously going to be your Abe no Seimei. He is an SSR water type, so not a lot of players are going to have him, but he is one of the best nonetheless, because he has the potential to AoE CC everyone. 30% I think, 30% chance to CC every single unit, and I realized that I have not actually explained what CC is. CC means crowd control, okay? So crowd control could be stun, could be petrify, could be freeze, sleep. And then another good option, obviously we do not have Abe, is to bring Medusa. Medusa is an SR type, but she can only CC one single unit. But at the same time, she drops poisons, which is very good combo with your Lucifer, because Lucifer actually crits harder on poison enemies. Well, at least on her third skill. And the third unit that actually drops a CC on a support is Marco Polo. Okay, so don't forget this. Marco Polo is a really good tank, but at the same time, sometimes, you know, when you're not going to use Marco Polo, especially like in my lineup where I don't have a slot left for a tank, I could actually just bring her, yes, she's a her, I could actually bring her in my support role and she would drop a stun whenever I need her to drop a stun. So as such, you can actually fill in your 3 support roles with CC, and that could work. So if you have been failing because you have been taking way too much damage, you can consider trying bringing 3 crowd control units on your support lineup. And finally, rule number 10, okay, so if you have been losing to a certain stage, don't do it again. I mean, like, just take a break, pause. I'm not telling you to go and drink a coffee and come back later again. I'm telling you to take days of breaks. It is normal for you to take a few days off of the campaign stage because sometimes it's just impossible to beat it, okay? You may think that you are really almost there, but the fact is, you really need a few more levels because you really need that next awakening tier in order to get the next damage boost, which will allow you to beat the next stage. So just save your time and energy and your I don't know, don't explode your blood vessels, I guess. Spend all that energy and time grinding the other PvE content that you have unlocked, like harder stages of Astral Shores or maybe even Grand Archives. This is just to generally boost the stats of all your units and then come back again in a week's time, or maybe I guess a week is quite long. Maybe in like 2 or 3 days time when your levels have increased, when your stats have improved, when your damage is a lot higher, when your tank is a lot bigger, that's when you come back and you give it another shot. So these have been the 10 rules of PvE story mode that I've been following very religiously. Let me know down in the comments whether I've missed out on anything else that you'd like to add. Let me know, let everyone else know, okay? And with that said, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, let me know. Like, comment and subscribe if not already done so. And as always, I will see you in the next video.